Hey guys, I can't help laughing at Pauline Buckles saying, doesn't Alec Baldwin look like he's reciting Hamlet in this picture? Well, indeed he does. And in fact, he's actually looks like he's returning to Broadway. But we'll be talking about Alec Baldwin, also Caitlyn Armstrong and JonBenet Ramsey, and then also something else in this recap. Good to see you guys here. I've got to say I'm not in a great mood because I've got a green screen here that's actually doing more harm than good. I wounded my knee during interval training earlier today, and so now I guess you can call me Wounded Knee. I don't know, just seems to be a year fraught with injuries and so on. I want to start off by talking a little bit about the Kylie Rodney case, just making a couple of observations. So I don't want to mention channels' names, but what I think is quite interesting that I've noticed has happened almost simultaneously in two different cases. You've had other people, well, in the one case, I think you had a private investigator, and guys in chat, please don't, if I don't mention their names, please don't you mention their names. But in, I think I saw it on Twitter, a private investigator said that he was in touch with Kylie's family, and they are aware of what someone has been saying, that Kylie never even existed. I mean, if you want to try and take away the voice of a victim, that's the way to do it. She never even existed to begin with. And it's like, by the way, there's actually a family that's involved. You know, they've also got feelings. Then there's another case where a creator put up, you know, a tribute, and the mother of the victim, in that case, Gabby Petito, actually got back to her and said, you know, I was actually moved to tears. Yeah, the families are out there. They're real people and they're watching. Did nobody realize that? So, you know, I think in a way it's a bit late to realize that, I don't know, you know, like when you have a situation like this where the car comes out, and then in some cases still not, right? The other thing that I think is quite interesting, and I got a really great comment on this where somebody said, do you think she drove with the window open? Meaning, do you think that it would have been easy to escape the vehicle because the window's open anyway? So there's the cat that is on the table here. It's going to probably start stepping over the keyboard at any moment. Anyway, got a dog on my lap and a cat on the table. Okay, good. She's heading the other way. So anyway, the point being, if Kylie was driving and the window was open anyway, then you can almost imagine that it would have been a fairly straightforward for it to get out, you know, because the window was already open. I suppose you could say, was the window totally open, but I still think a very interesting point. And that then brought up another area that I don't think too many people have thought about, which is, what is the temperature that night? We've spoken about the moon, we've spoken about rain. What could the temperature been that night? Amory Cat Lady says, it's frightening how quickly water floods a car. When do we get to see the cat? Well, the cat's down here playing with the green screen. Yeah, she doesn't tend to jump onto your lap like a dog when called. But yeah, so did you guys know that Truckee is well known as the coldest place in America? Did you guys know that? Let's just go to this over here. Truckee has often been recognized as the coldest spot in the nation, but not during winter. these cold temperatures occur from June through early October. Well, when did this incident happen? It happened in August, right? And one thing I noticed during the, when we saw some of those, what do you call it, party photos, especially the one from Sammy Smith, almost everyone is wearing long-sleeved shirts or sweaters. Did you guys notice that? The other thing is what Kylie was repeatedly wearing, last seen wearing, was a sort of a fleece, not the shirt that she was sort of the black shirt that she was sort of the sort of strapless blouse or whatever that she was seen in the last photo. She was actually wearing a fleece. In other words, it was likely cold. So would she have been driving with the window open if it was cold, too cold to actually wear, short sleeve shirt? I do think it's just an interesting line of thought. The other side of it could be, is that why they left the campground? Because it was actually just plain cold. I don't know if you guys know, Truckee is almost 2,000 meters above sea level, 1,700 and, is it 70? Where did I see it? I don't have it. Is it there? Oh, there. 1,773 meters. That's pretty damn high above sea level. So the coldness may be a reason why they left early. It also may be a possible reason why fires may have been made to kind of keep warm. That's another aspect we just don't really know about. Yeah, the white Odd Future hoodie. Yeah. Terry Dean, drive with the window open to sober up. Yeah, maybe. But you might also just feel like I'm cold, So, I mean, that's something I learned. The fact that Truckee stands out as the coldest place in America. It's quite late for me. I mean, I'm not from America. It's quite late for this little tidbit of information to be coming out. And you kind of wonder, is that relevant in the story? Is the cold relevant in the story? Yvonne, good to see you here. Well, okay. Interesting, Liz. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. The other thing, I saw another channel speaking about was the car in neutral, which suggests that someone pushed the car in, I guess. But it's also what you would do if you were going to pull the car out. I mean, if it was up to you to salvage the vehicle, to get the vehicle out, right? If somebody said, I need you to get this vehicle that's in the water out the water, would you leave it in park or would you put it in neutral? I know what I would do. So you sort of wonder, are people not thinking, in other words, you see the car's wheels turning. Well, she could have put it in neutral, but also equally the people salvaging the vehicle. I must say we're in a Chris Wattsy place with this case, because there's no information. People are speculating, and often the other way. So if there are two possible interpretations for the car in neutral, whoa, something could have happened. But yeah, also it would be totally normal. In my previous video, I was saying it would actually make sense that Kylie wouldn't be found in the driver's seat, because with the vehicle kind of submerging, she would follow the air pocket if she couldn't get out the vehicle anyway. So you'd expect her to be not just sitting and the water rising. You'd expect her to be moving in the vehicle. There's another way of looking at things, if that makes sense. Mel Stiller says, I brought up the window bit in a comment. Well done, Mel. Well done. Yeah, it's a high elevation. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to take the Kylie Rodney case. We might come back to it at the end of this, but I now want to kind of go through at least 3 different cases that have played out during August, starting with Caitlyn Armstrong. So what's kind of been playing out in the Caitlyn Armstrong case is in a macro way, in a broad way. We've kind of been racing towards a trial. There was going to be a fast track trial. I think it was originally going to take place September or October, but like quite soon. Now it's been delayed. Now it's not going to happen like that anymore. And I remember when her attorney gave a press conference, it was sort of this weird thing of, we want a fast track trial, and if you guys aren't ready, well, then that's kind of too bad. That was kind of the impression I got. Well, now it's been delayed by motions, as far as I am aware, from Kaitlyn's side. So it kind of makes you wonder, did they really want a fast track trial to begin with? Or is that to put pressure on the authorities? What is that all about? So that's the one thing that's been playing out. It also feels like there's a bit of a tit for tat going on where something comes out in terms of motions, and then it appears in the media, and that's from Kaitlyn's side, and then there's almost a response from the prosecution side. Now, you could say it's not playing out in the media, so just the court narrative, the motions narrative that is being published in the media. But the Kaitlyn's attorney has already said that, not really in these words, but basically that it's already a trial by media and it's unfair and so on. That is quite standard for high-profile cases. I really don't know how people can still be saying that. The high-profile cases all the time, when they're high-profile, do you just say, okay, too many people know about this case, we'll put it in a drawer and just leave it? It seems kind of absurd. Mel Stiller asks, is it delayed from her side? Well, it's just these motions that have been continually put in play. The judges decided, well, we're going to have to delay. So anyway, we'll get to that. Terry says, if a window is open, screams would travel well over water. You would imagine the car crashing in would do that as well. Okay, anyway, let's try and stick to Caitlyn Armstrong. So the first thing I want to highlight here is that a search warrant, the contents of a search warrant has been revealed, right? I'm going to just put up the story over here. So this is from KXAN. Search warrant, Caitlyn Armstrong had $6,000 plastic surgery receipt from Costa Rica and her sister's passport. That's not really news. The part that's news is where it refers to her name as Alison Page. Do you see that? You see that? Okay, sorry, I don't have it on the... Yeah, so that is from KXAN, and you can see at the bottom over there that Alison Page was one of the aliases that she used, right? So there it also refers to the boarding pass, the $6,360 plastic surgery receipt, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through the contents of that search warrant in a little bit more detail. So Alison Page, so that's the name on the receipt for the plastic surgery for $6,360. That was the name on the receipt for plastic surgery, Alison Page. Now, I remember during one of the motions that was put forward came from law enforcement also, I think the prosecutors, saying that they wanted medical records from Costa Rica. And so I think they're trying to, there are quite a few things that seem obvious, but they're trying to make it absolutely certain that Kaitlin had plastic surgery and not someone else, not Alison Page. Or put another way, they need to show that Caitlyn Armstrong is Alison Page. Does that make sense? So what's quite interesting is we know she had plastic surgery on June the 23rd at a medical center in Costa Rica. Let me say that again. We know that Alison Page had plastic surgery on June 23rd at a medical center in Costa Rica. So on the surface, that seems to be yet another alias that may have been used. I think her defense would say, no, not at all. That's just somebody she knew, and she just happened to have that receipt with her. Then she also had a United Airlines boarding pass under the name of Christine Armstrong for a flight from Newark to Costa Rica that was also found in her belongings during this execution of the search warrant. Other items discovered during the July 6th search of Caitlin's possessions included numerous credit cards. What's quite interesting is the names of these, the names on these numerous credit cards. They included Dynamis Racing, which I think was the name of the company that her boyfriend's, it was like her boyfriend's cycling was all under that name. Then Wheelhouse Mobile, that was a business they were involved in building these sort of silver trailers. And then there was a credit card with Caitlyn Armstrong's name on it, and then also a credit card with Colin Strickland's name on it. So at least 4 different credit cards, one belonging to Caitlyn Armstrong, or at least one. There were also papers in Caitlyn's belongings with names, phone numbers, and credit cards, handwritten. Caitlyn had also kept receipts for a bus trip. I'm assuming that maybe the bus trip from the airport to somewhere in Costa Rica. Could also be, I suppose it could be in Austin to the airport, but I somehow think not. But anyway, also a visit to Walmart and an acquisition from T-Mobile. Interestingly, a box for a white Apple iPhone, presumably new, and the phone itself was also found. Besides American and Costa Rican currency, Caitlyn also had Mexican currency with her, which suggests she had either considered heading to Mexico first. Bear in mind, she's from Texas. Texas is right sort of next to Mexico. She may have thought of going to Mexico first, or as an alternative, second. So from after going to Costa Rica, coming back perhaps into America via Mexico after things cooled down. It's just interesting that she had Mexican currency with her as well. Perhaps she, as I say, wanted to return over land or even by boat instead of going back by air, because she must have been aware that she could fly on her sister's passport. Would she be able to fly back on her sister's passport? Anyway, an abbreviated timeline reveals plastic surgery on June 23rd, apprehended and arrest just 6 days later with bruising under eyes, and then the formal search of her belongings executed approximately 1 week after her arrest. Now, if this information isn't suppressed, one wonders how one can provide an innocent explanation. For example, for carrying a sister's passport. When last did you travel with somebody else's passport? I just mean with it. You've got someone else's passport with you. When last did you do that? I don't know if I've ever done that. I don't think I've ever done that. Boo Spaniard says Walmart receipts and video. In many cases, there might be CCTV. Okay, so we're almost about to wrap up with this. So if this information isn't suppressed, you know, are we going to get an innocent explanation for, you know, the whole carrying her sister's passport, flying on her sister's passport, as well as having her boyfriend's credit card? One also wonders whether Strickland ever reported his credit card stolen. We do know that there was apparently a burglary at Armstrong's and Strickland's home on the night of the incident. Is he going to say, you know what, I didn't know, or my credit card was stolen, but I didn't think that she took it. I thought the burglar took it. You know, one just wonders what that's all going to be about. So right now, the fast-track trial that Armstrong requested has been delayed, paving the way for a war between Armstrong's high-powered attorney and law enforcement. Expect much of the behind-the-scenes battle to play out in the media, much as the same has occurred in the Alec Baldwin saga over the course of almost a year. And that then brings us to Alec Baldwin. Now, I think it's quite important to just go right back to the beginning and just acknowledge that when the Alec Baldwin thing happened, you know, at the time that it happened, it sort of made world news, or it made headlines far and wide, certainly made it as far as where I am. I think I kind of gave Baldwin the benefit of the doubt. I kind of felt sorry for him. I thought it was a tragic accident. It didn't seem much about it, and it certainly didn't seem the sort of thing you would cover on a true crime channel. It just didn't seem it didn't seem like a where there's smoke, there's fire type of thing, right? So let me just say that again. Faced with the basic situation that a gun discharged on the set of a movie, and Baldwin happened to be holding the gun, and they were filming a scene, and just seemed really bad luck and unfortunate that the cinematographer was struck and died, right? Just seemed really tragic. And faced with this small amount of information, I kind of thought that, yeah, it's just an accident, nothing to see here, folks. But then Alec Baldwin went on to this. All of this happened in mid-October. But then Alec Baldwin went on to ABC News, and he gave quite a long interview. And amongst other things, he said he didn't feel guilty about it. He said he never pulled the trigger, and certain other things. It also started coming out that several people walked off set the same morning that this happened, complaining about safety issues. And then all those little red flags started going off. The fabric around this wasn't quite as like, what's the word? It wasn't just a straightforward thing. Now it seemed like there was a lot more going on. There were also other accidental discharges. Now, you might say that's just speculation, but months passed, and eventually the New Mexico sort of department in charge of health and safety fined the rust producers the maximum for safety violation. So it's not like there wasn't a problem. There was a problem. There was a problem with safety. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten that fine. That's the one thing. The next thing, there was a flurry of lawsuits. But I do want to kind of ask you guys, if you think about it, if you were in Alec Baldwin's shoes and you were in the horrible position where, and I believe it was accidental, but you're in a horrible position where you were in the same situation, you had a gun in your hand, and there happened to be a live round in it, and it went off, would you sort of be extremely accommodating and say, anything I owe, everything I owe, I'll be happy to pay? Or would you be sort of like deny everything? You know, which tactic would you employ, right? And then I think there is a legally sound way of dealing with something, but there's also the aspect where one must ask, is this, how innocent is this? How much of an accident is this, and how much of an accident waiting to happen is this? Liz Graham said, why do they have live rounds on set? I don't get that. I actually saw that apparently, I'm trying to find your comment. There it is. I actually saw somewhere that I think they found, was it 7 other live rounds? The search of the set, I think they found something like 7 other live rounds. Anyway, more than 4 or 5. And so what that suggests is that if the accident didn't happen then, it may have happened later. There's a certain inevitability about it. Pauline says, I would talk to an attorney first. So there was body cam that came out. In fact, it came out during the Depp versus Heard thing, which I thought was quite interesting. What was also interesting was, I don't think Alec Baldwin expected her to die when he was in the middle of a interview, when the news came out that we've just heard back she didn't survive, and he seemed clearly shocked. And of course, when that came out, well, then the interview sort of ended shortly after that. But the other side of it is, Alec Baldwin wasn't just someone who happened to be holding the gun. He was also a producer. He was the titular character in this story. His name is Harland Rust. The movie was called Rust. He was holding the gun. The script supervisor said that the particular scene that they were recording didn't even call for him to discharge the weapon. So why did he, or why was it? So, that's a couple of things to consider. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know, Alec Baldwin was on Chris Cuomo's show, the ex-CNN presenter, and he said, I can't find any work. And just a couple of hours ago, it's been announced that he's going to be appearing on Broadway. Now, I've actually lost count how many times they've said this is the first work he's doing since the incident, because he appeared in a true crime podcast called Art Heist. He went to the UK and appeared in some role. I think it's called 47 Minutes or something like that. So that's the second thing. I'm just trying to think what the third one was. But anyway, this one is at least the third role that he seems to be taking on. So to be saying, I don't know, I've just seen it in the media quite a few times where they say this is the first role that he's had since Rust. Not really. In fact, I would go further to say he seems to have continued almost as though nothing has really happened. Anyway, so we'll get into that in a second. So the other thing that's quite interesting with Alec Baldwin is some discovery has been released, and we're going to look at that quickly. I also want to refer to a little bit of text from the New York Post that I think is really interesting. So first of all, that's the New York Post article I want to refer to. And there's a section that just is worth highlighting. Nobody reasonable, this is quoting from the article. Where is it? There. Nobody reasonable, including the technicians at the FBI, has argued that Baldwin hurt anyone on purpose, and I agree with that. Indeed, outside of the political fringes, Baldwin has been routinely portrayed as one of the victims in the tragedy. And yet, just like his nemesis, this hasn't been good enough. Now, I don't really want to talk about Trump here. I just want to talk about the fact that it hasn't seemed to be good enough that he's a victim here. And I don't know, some of the things that he said has just really been kind of interesting. For example, he said, "I never pulled the trigger," right? I had the gun in my hand, and it's like almost like he's saying the gun went off. So recently, the FBI have come back and said they've tested the gun, and there's no way that, obviously, that the trigger could have pulled itself because of these locking mechanisms. The other thing they said that is quite interesting is they said it is possible for the, Timmy, I'm going to let you go down here. Well, my knee is still quite sensitive. Something they did say was that there is a way for the gun to go off without cocking the trigger, and that is if you hit the, what do you call it? Is it the, is it the hammer? Yeah, I think it's the hammer. You hit the hammer from the back. If you hit that hard enough, it is possible to discharge the weapon. But I don't know if anyone is even thinking about that. I mean, he was in front of, there were like 13, 14 witnesses in the church when it happened. I don't think anyone is saying that he dropped the gun or that someone bumped into him or that he, all he did was he drew the weapon. And I don't think anyone is suggesting that he struck the back of it. You know, that would be kind of absurd as well, the hammer. Yeah. Yeah, the hammer is, I'm thinking about it as the front of that pin that you pull back when you cock it. I'm not quite sure what you call that part. The trigger's at the bottom. Not quite sure what the back part of that thing is. But I guess it's the hammer. I guess the whole thing is the hammer. So, I mean, it's taken almost a year just to get to the point where we say the person holding the gun caused the gun to go off. It's taken that long. And one just wonders why that wasn't common cause right from the beginning. Okay, so this is the lab report. Can you guys see that? This is the lab report. You can see all the cartridge casings there, right? Some of it is redacted, not that much. I've highlighted some of it. I'm certainly not going to go through all of it now. I'll go through what I've highlighted, but they basically did find, here and there, they found additional live rounds. So it wasn't like one live round, there were even more. So these are all the cartridges that they seized. Cartridge provided by Seth Kenny, cartridge from item 25. And so it goes on, so it goes on. So here is the FBI report dealing with the examination of the firearm, right? And so they say it functioned normally when tested in the lab. So first of all, it's normal. It wasn't the strange mechanism that defied the laws of nature. It wasn't like very rusted or very damaged. It acted like a normal Pieta single action revolver. So they tested it by cocking it quarter cock, half cock, and fully cocked. And they said this is consistent with the normal operation. So what they found was that it, obeyed the laws of gun nature, put it that way. Then they did accidental discharge testing, and this is where they did hammer at rest, right? So in other words, it's almost in a normal position, and then they struck it from behind, and they were able to do that. They say when force is applied to the hammer, such as striking or dropping, it can fire the cartridge without the pull of a trigger. But that's not what's being alleged here. Terry Dean asked about toxicology. I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I think they did toxicology on the victim. So anyway, then they did quarter and half cock, and obviously they said they weren't able to, the gun wasn't able to fire without pulling the trigger. Then they also did the full cock position, same thing. They're just giving descriptions of what is a functional live round, what is a dummy cartridge, what's a blank cartridge. So it's quite a long report. It's definitely goes on 37 pages. I'm not going to go through all of it. There's also a toxicology report, which I think we must go to. So let me kind of bring that up. Let me just do that. So I'm just trying to find, I'm just trying to find something. Sorry, just a second. I hope this is it. So I took some screen grabs of the of this report, and I thought I emailed them to myself, but apparently I didn't. Seems like I emailed everything else. What's this? No, it's not that. Just give me a second while I bring it up. So I also want to talk about him going on to Chris Cuomo and what he said there. But before I do that, I first want to just bring up the, sorry about this delay, the screen grabs. I think this is it. No, it's not. Okay, is this it? Anyway, this is the crime scene. Let me just show you that for now. I don't know if one can actually call it a crime scene. It's the scene of the incident. Let's put it that way. They've still got to determine whether it was a crime, but it certainly, in terms of optics, looks like it's been treated. Looks like it may be treated as a crime scene, with these tags and so on. A recent article from the Daily Mail basically it describes it pretty much how it is, which is where we are right now. Baldwin waits to see if he will be charged for accidental rush shooting. That's kind of the situation where we're at right now. Is he going to be charged? Sorry, I really wish I could find the screen grabs I took of this. I really thought I'd email them to myself, but the bottom line is that the medical report found it to be an accidental shooting, and that is what he referred to in the interview with Chris Cuomo. Is that he said, almost like he's saying, it's a fait accompli. The FBI or a report has already found that it was an accident. That I didn't do something on purpose. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. If Baldwin didn't intend to kill Helena, and I don't think he did. If he didn't intend to shoot her, didn't purposefully do what he did, I don't think you can immediately say, well, it's an accident and no one's responsible. The other side is, was there negligence? Was there recklessness? And so we've already got the New Mexico authorities saying that there were significant safety failures. And so when there are enough safety problems, then when an accident happens, it's not an accident. It's not accidental. In Kylie Rodney's case, you might say, is this an innocent accident or is it foul play? Well, if somebody got her intoxicated, like she took in a substance without knowing it, well, then you have a situation where an accident is almost inevitable, and that person, who is an older person, should have known not to give her the substance. That's definitely a possibility. But in terms of this, he referred to this report. Let me go right to the end of it. So here he talks. Here is a signature. I think it's over here. There you can see manner of death, accident. And that is what Baldwin is now able to say. He's able to say, well, a authoritative report has concluded that this is an accident. But that's not the end of the story. The investigation is still ongoing. They're trying to determine the other factors. Because Baldwin wasn't just the guy holding the gun, he was also the guy that was to some extent responsible for the whole production. And not only him, there were co-producers as well. In a sense, it's quite a complicated story, this, because there's so many people. It's almost like a normal true crime scenario. There's the place of the incident, but instead of there being 3 or 4 people, there are like 100 people that are more and less directly involved. There are also like 14 witnesses. And so it definitely makes things a lot more complicated. I don't think it was intentional, but if you are faced with, if you have certain responsibilities as a producer, he was saying he was only responsible for creative input. Anyway, that's up to them to decide. Let me go a little bit further up here. So that the post-mortem examination of Helena Hutchins found, cause of death to be an accident. As I said, I don't think that's the end of the story, though. In terms of toxicology, they didn't find any problems in terms of her, what was in her system. Okay, I'm kind of going to go through a separate script that I prepared here. I've been a bit flustered because I couldn't find those images that I thought I sent. Anyway, so ever since the Rush shooting less than a year ago, so it's 2 months, a month and a half to go, then it'll be a year. It happened in mid-October last year. but ever since this happened, it's felt like Baldwin has simply gone on with his life. As early as December 2021, less than 2 months after the incident, Baldwin told ABC he couldn't wait for the investigation to be completed. I remember when I say that, I mean, he said, I'm going on to ABC now because I can't wait for the investigation to be completed, for them to say, this is the situation or that's the situation. I'm going to tell you guys now. And I remember way back then thinking, well, you really should wait. You should cooperate. I mean, actively with the investigation. If you're contrite, if you're really sorry about what happened, you'd give them everything they needed, including, but especially your phone. And it actually took until the middle of January the following year for Baldwin to actually hand over his phone. Think about this. This incident happens in mid-October. They only get hold of Alec Baldwin's phone, not in November, not in December. 2 full months go by, and then goes into the middle of January, and then he finally hands over his phone. That's quite a long time. By the end of January, Baldwin had settled a lawsuit that arose in New York after brawling over a parking spot. This was amidst news of a flurry of lawsuits against the actor from fellow Rust staffers, including from the script supervisor, the gaffer, the armorer, but not Helena's husband, Matthew. Well, not yet. The armorer, I'm not sure if the armorer sued Baldwin directly. I think she may have sued indirectly. I'm not 100% sure of that. In February, Baldwin bought a house in Vermont. In the same month, he jetted off to the UK for a secret filming project. While Baldwin was away, while he was in the UK, in the middle of filming the hijack thriller 97 Minutes, I think I said 47 minutes earlier, Helena's husband announced his lawsuit against the actor. To add irony to insult and insult to injury, Baldwin participated in an 8-episode true crime podcast called Art Fraud during this period. He was also one of its executive producers. You don't get the feeling that Rust happened and he sort of respectfully stopped doing everything. You kind of get the idea that instead everything continued almost as per normal. In early March, apparently unfazed by the developing legal tsunami, Baldwin appeared at the Boulder Film Festival, all smiles, relaxed, and he seemed casually dismissive of the Rust shooting. Bear in mind, this was before the New Mexico report came out. And so he was asked what he thought about it, and he said, you know what, this is his words. He said, what you have is a certain group of people, litigants and whatever, on whatever side, who the attitude is, well, the people who likely seem negligent have no money, and the people who have money are not negligent, right? So he's saying, this is money grubbing. I'm innocent. They're only coming after me because I've got money. But the following month, New Mexico state regulators fined Rust movie producers over $130,000, the maximum possible fine for negligence related to firearms safety failures and ignoring industry protocols. But this fine seemed to be water off a duck's back. By the middle of May, one of the Rust producers told the Hollywood Reporter that Rust would still be completed. So despite just getting the fine, you had this article come out. Let's just bring it up. We're going to be able to complete the movie. I don't know why that's there. We're going to be able to complete the movie. And then he walked back the statement a little bit later on. After the story's publication, he said, at this point, it's just a hope. So it started off as, we will be able to complete the movie. Then there's a bit of a backlash. And then is it the producer? I'm just trying to, one of the producers said, oh, no, I was just expressing my hope that we were going to do that, right? So In June, so this came out in May, this article came out in May. In June, Alec and his wife were sharing selfies about the latest pregnancy, Baldwin's 8th child in 10 years. July wasn't without scandal either. Baldwin had an angry response to a tweet that made headlines. He tweeted, "When I'm finally not charged with any crime, I'll come find you so you can apologize. I'll find you, Mike." But if Baldwin was supremely confident in his case and in his innocence, and if the investigation seemed to be going nowhere fast, and if Baldwin seemed to be able to make hay while the sun shone, the FBI threw a spanner into the works in mid-August. Almost 10 months after the fact, the FBI found that Alec Baldwin must have pulled the trigger. And so it was after this that Baldwin appeared on Chris Cuomo's show. So after the report came out that he pulled the trigger, Baldwin appeared on Chris Cuomo's show, almost seemed like, I don't know what one can call it, PR or a response or whatever, right? And so this is what he said. He claimed himself as the victim and he blamed the assistant director. This is a quote from what he said on the show. He said, quote, "I got fired from another job yesterday. There I was, all set to go to a movie, jump on a plane. I've been talking with these guys for months, and they told me yesterday, we don't want to do the film with you because of this." That's the end of the quote. According to People, Baldwin also said recently that his experience has taken years off my life. Baldwin is 64 years old. If anyone had years taken off her life, it was Helena Hutchins, who was 42 when her life was snuffed out in Russ' dusty wooden church. Now we await the results of the investigation with bated breath. So that sort of brings us, in a way, to full speed. Anyway, it was on this show that he said, I'm not sure if he said, it's in the FBI report that it was an accident. But it's basically the toxicology, the post-mortem, the autopsy report of Helena that they say cause of death is an accident. I think that's true, but I don't think you can necessarily say that covers the whole story, right? Okay, so that is that's that. In terms of Baldwin saying, I haven't been able to get a job, we know that I've kind of just mentioned the things he has participated in. It's just come out now a few hours ago that Baldwin will be appearing on Broadway. So that's just come out over here. Again, I don't know how you can say it's his first job since the Rush shooting. I mean, definitely isn't his first job. But anyway, there you go. Okay, so now we're going to move on to JonBenet Ramsey. And this is really, well, let me just go through it before I say anything. Just give me a second. So we're going to do JonBenet Ramsey, and then we're going to deal with the Artemis rocket. We can do some real true crime rocket science. We're going to deal with that. I'm just trying to find JonBenet Ramsey. Can't seem to find it. There we go. Okay. Okay, so an article has come out in the last, what is it, day or so, that someone feels like they made I think the article, what was the title of the article? Let me just, explosive new JonBenet Ramsey theory about ransom note may catch killer. Explosive new theory. That's from the US Sun. Let's maybe put it over there. So we've got an expert that is come forward, and this is an explosive theory that it's going to blow your socks off. And it's got to do with that SBTC. It's got to do with that SBTC, right? Yeah, it discusses the ransom note. Mal Stiller says this case doesn't seem to have an ending. Bear in mind, this case is 25 years old, and so whenever someone says, can you please stop talking about this or that case? I don't know, just think about the JonBenet Ramsey case. That's how long some of these narratives go on for. So anyway, in terms of JonBenet Ramsey, I've got a question for you guys. I'm going to put it in chat. Those of you on Patreon, please don't answer it. I think you may know what this is about. Excuse me. Yeah, Rick the Explorer says a physics lab student may have written the letter. Yeah, that's what's being alleged here. No, I'm just saying those who are in from Patreon, please don't. I mean, I think you know what the end result is here. So the question is this a contender for best theory? So is this explosive? Is this theory really so explosive? Is it? Is this going to change the case? Is this the breakthrough we've been waiting for? Right. So there were some. If we go through the backstory of the JonBenet Ramsey case, there were some good and not so good theories over the quarter century that's passed since the JonBenet Ramsey case went from white hot to stone cold. There was Santa versus the housekeeper. There was a disgruntled employee versus a twisted pageant photographer. There was Steve Thomas's theory of someone inside the house versus Lou Smith's intruder theory. There was Mary Lacey, the one-time DA, her theory that John Mark Carr was a dead ringer for JonBenet's killer. There's also Dr. Phil putting Burke Ramsey on television on the 20-year anniversary to convince everyone he couldn't possibly be involved. Who was right? John Douglas versus James Kolar. Wrong question. Who was closer to the truth? Well, how about this Utah-based private investigator, a guy called Jason Jensen? Jensen believes the signature of the Ramsey ransom note reveals all. So I'm just going to bring myself back a little bit. Okay. So this is quoting from this article. We're going to just quickly go into it in a bit more detail, but it's referring to that SBTC. According to the Sun, quote, Jensen's beliefs stem from an academic paper about quantum structures published by two physicists at Colorado University in March 1996, just months before JonBenet's murder. The paper, authored by Alex Zunger and Alberto Franchetti, focuses on comparisons between pseudo-potential and single-band truncated crystal, or STBC calculations. Right? Single band truncated crystal, right? STBC should actually be SBTC. Yeah. So I don't know, in the actual article they have it not quite right there. Anyway, the author of the ransom note may have been a student of one of these professors or perhaps a sibling of one of these students, theorized Jensen. The odds of a paper being written in March 1996 referencing SBTC and a ransom note signed SBTC is uncanny. So, so that is what that's the conclusion that he's drawing. Now, I must say, when I originally read this, I took the error in the original article that actually said STBC, and I thought, well, that's crazy. He's saying it doesn't really matter if the letters are different. Actually, the letters do correspond, SBTC. But what the article doesn't say, I'm not sure if I've read it, if it read as far, if it does say that, but there are two possible references that come from inside the Ramsey home. So this guy's going all the way to a college paper, right, to find reinforcing evidence. But there was a framed picture in the Ramsey basement that said Subic Bay Training Camp, SBTC. So there's SBTC inside the Ramsey home. And John Ramsey himself attended this. He was stationed in the Navy in the Philippines. So did John not think about the SBTC? The other thing that it could refer to is Saved by the Cross, SBTC, Saved by the Cross. And one wonders whether Patsy, was a very religious, strong Christian, thought that by signing, if Patsy wrote the note, thought that by signing the note would actually save her. And if you think of it in a very weird way, ultimately, the Ramseys haven't faced any charges. So was she saved by the cross? Just an interesting way of looking at it. I'm just saying, are those possibilities SBTC or saved by the cross in terms of a Patsy authored ransom note? Is that less likely or more likely than some college student that is being maybe identified 25 years later that saw something in some kind of random crystal calculation? Which one do you think makes more sense? But nevertheless, the Sun describes this as an explosive new JonBenet Ramsey theory. So, yeah, I just thought that was something that has come up that is definitely quite interesting. But there are actually other SBTCs. I think it's important to bring these up. There's also Staffordshire Bull Terrier Club in the UK. So maybe you want to go and check that out. Also, Sugarette's Batten and Twirling Call, as well as Stockport Binocular and Telescope Centre. Maybe they need to investigate that as well. Thanks, Julie, for those, or Robbie, for those, for those suggestions. Okay, so that then brings us up to speed with these three cases: Caitlyn Armstrong, Alec Baldwin, and JonBenet Ramsey. Do you guys think this is a contender for best theory? Yvonne says, the further in time we get away from the crime, the stranger the theories will get. That does seem to be how it works. Bria says, I'm making plans to fly out of town. Sounds good. Okay. Andrew says, I read about it. They're thinking about a random smart young student who wanted to okay, so Susan says, okay, I'm not going to quote that. Okay, so now we're going to deal with the with some rocket science, actual rocket science. I'm just trying to find the right image. There we go. So I don't know how many of you guys were aware that there was an attempted launch by a moon rocket, the most powerful rocket ever built, yesterday. And I think the reason why this caught my imagination is because I'm 50 years old, and this year is the 50th anniversary of when we stopped going to the moon. And that definitely kind of, I don't know, it just resonates with me. So in 1972, the year that I was born, people stopped going to the moon. I sort of feel like I feel a bit unlucky that, there are all these trips to the moon, all these things going on, and then I'm born, and then it's like, nah, let's stop, let's stop with that stuff. And so a few years later, when I was able to talk and comprehend English, my father confidently pointed to the moon one day and he said, "My boy, when you're my age, you're going to be going for holidays on the moon." And I've kind of been waiting for that to happen. I believe my dad. I was like, okay. And so 50 years have passed. And in spite of my plans to book a room at the Holiday Inn on the moon, Holiday Inn have stubbornly refused to expand its franchise beyond Earth. Marriott aren't on the moon, Hyatt, Best Western, also on Earth. And so we waited and waited. Russia sent a probe to crash land on Venus during this span of time. The space shuttle program came in 1981 and went in 2011. Who doesn't remember that? In the late 90s, the International Space Station was assembled like so many Lego pieces. One rover after another was sent to Mars. All 9 Star Wars episodes came and went, and we still didn't go to the moon. In October 2020, NASA's Voyager 2 probe drifted beyond the heliopause, a boundary region where the sun's influence terminates and the interstellar medium starts. So here is a graphic that sort of shows that. There's Earth, well, around about there, I guess, somewhere there. And the moon, of course, is right next to Earth, and Voyager 2 is all the way coming right out of our solar system. And so we've sent a man-made craft almost right out of our solar system, but we can't take ourselves to the very closest sphere, our moon. It's been staring at us all this time, and it's like, well, should we go there? No, let's go to Mars. Let's go to Venus. Let's check out this or that comet or this or that asteroid. So just think about it. A probe developed in the late 70s has traveled 11.6 billion miles from Earth. What's the trouble? What's the problem going the piffly less than 240,000 miles to the moon? Why is that such a head scratch? And haven't we been to the moon before? Didn't we go there so often that people lost interest and they would rather watch Batman, the serial? They didn't want to watch the moon, stop interrupting our programming. Or is going to the moon like surfing? Once you stop, do you lose your nerve? Or is there something else we need to scratch our heads about? So the reason I'm dealing with this is actual real rocket science. And hopefully when I share this with you, you're going to learn something about Earth and the scenario that we're in that you didn't know. Did you know that? Have you heard of the Van Allen radiation belt? So there's Earth, and there's this weird, almost figure of 8 of radiation that is sort of swirling around via sort of the magnetic the magnetic fields exerted by the Earth, right? And the radiation belts conform to these fields. And so these fields are quite deadly, especially if you go further out. And so it's one reason why the space shuttle always stayed in relatively low Earth orbit. The space shuttle never like went to the moon and back. And all these missions to the International Space Station were relatively close to the Earth to avoid these Van Allen radiation belts. Stephanie, good to see you here. Bria says, I have a good friend who's an astronomer. Sharon says, you need to talk with my sons. Okay. Yvonne says, I think NASA stopped after the shuttle tragedies, but this is a NASA, what's the word? Vehicle. NASA built this vehicle. Sorry, not that vehicle. Let me just, sorry, got the wrong image there. Let me just try and find it again. Yeah, this is a NASA-built vehicle. So I guess NASA are trying to be back. You can see the logo over there and over there. So NASA are stepping back into the whole space thing. It certainly appears. So keep trying to bring up the picture I'm looking for. There it is. So again, you can see NASA there, and I think that's also a NASA helicopter. NASA. Okay. Yeah, it is fascinating. And so it was quite disappointing. Anyway, let me take you through this. So this is the rocket science that's involved in the 2022 mission. Going to the moon is very different to staying in low or relatively close orbit, like those shuttle and space station missions. The crucial additional variable when you skip a little further across the space that separates Earth from the moon is radiation. And so to deal with radiation, you've got to have shielding in your craft, and shielding is heavy, right? The shielding protects you from this radiation, you being the human crew, right? You don't want to come back with a suntan and cancer. So this particular craft that you're seeing here has, I think, 3 mannequins inside and like a toy, fluffy toy. And they want to test the radiation levels on these mannequins, and then also the speed at which this rocket's going to come back. It's going to enter the Earth's atmosphere at incredible speeds. As I said, this is the most powerful rocket built thus far. They also want to just test that on a non-human crew, and then go to the next step of a human crew. And so this launch was supposed to take place yesterday. But that is the thing that complicates going to the moon, is the radiation aspect. And that radiation is called the Van Allen belts. Let me bring that up again. So there they are. So to get away from the Earth, you've got to go through this light blue area here, which is where the radiation is the worst, as far as I know. I could be wrong. It could be worse there, but yeah. Anyway, these radiation belts are something that they've got to contend with, and they've been thinking about destroying these radiation belts so that future space flights can be less complicated. Bear in mind, when you have a payload, when your craft is heavier, you need more fuel, and it just makes everything more dangerous and more difficult. So the shielding, if you need less shielding, then you don't need as much fuel and so on. Okay, so according to CNN, the crew aboard Artemis 1 may sound a little unusual, but they serve a purpose. Snoopy will serve as the zero gravity indicator. Let's see if I can. There's Snoopy. Well, that's referring to, there's Snoopy. Snoopy is the zero gravity indicator, and he will float inside the capsule once it reaches the space environment. The mannequins named Commander Moonkin Campus, Helga, and Zohar will measure deep space radiation that future crews will have to deal with. So I think that's one of the mannequins, and there are the others. So they're going to just sort of, bring up the deal. They're going to measure the radiation. Okay. There will also be a biology experiment carrying seeds, algae, fungi, and yeast that's tucked inside Orion to measure how life reacts to this radiation as well. So that's it. Yeah, a few hours ago, this was at the time of writing, now it's yesterday, the last-minute head-scratching led to the scrub of the Artemis 1 launch, which was scheduled for yesterday. So unfortunately, there was some kind of engine problem. There were all sorts of problems, and then I think ultimately they stopped the launch countdown at 40 minutes to go. So definitely quite disappointing. I've got a really nice image of that. See if I can bring it up. Yeah, they decided to scrub the launch with 40 minutes to go. And so I think the next launch window is September. I think it's September 3rd to 5th or something like that. So I just thought I would share with you guys some actual rocket science. I don't know whether you guys have ever heard of the Van Allen belts, but it's quite interesting. I've also read a book, the only authorized biography on Neil Armstrong, which was definitely quite interesting. I really recommend it. I think it's called First Moon. They made a very bad movie based on that. And yeah, Stephanie makes a really good point. It's best to wait, not to rush rocket science. So when you're dealing with some of the smartest people, dealing with some of the most complicated equipment, you don't rush. You problem solve. You are careful, and we must do the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sandy Hurd says, I've been reading about the Tychos theory. It's a drastically different belief about the structure of our solar system. I highly recommend checking it out. If true, it could be a factor in the delay. Okay. I don't know about that. Empath says, are we discussing JonBenet's case? No, we've come to the end of this analysis. We spoke briefly about Kylie Rodney, then we went through Caitlyn Armstrong, that case is delayed. Then we did Alec Baldwin, that case feels like it's about to come to a head. Baldwin is about to find out if he's going to be charged or not. Helena was found to have, the manner of death is accidental. But the investigation is still not complete. The FBI have just come back to say there's no way the trigger could have the gun could have discharged without the trigger being pulled. Yeah. And then JonBenet, it's just that someone has said SBTC is something related to Colorado University, not the Ramsey. So it's a kind of another intruder, stranger type theory. Yeah. Okay. So we at 1 hour 20. I don't know whether I like sort of going to like not a round number, but like 130 or whatever. So I don't know whether I'm going to take a couple of questions. I actually forgot to bring my book of Elvis and the Colonel. I do have it here. Maybe I should quickly go and get it so I can show it to you guys. I'll just take Timmy off. Give me 30 seconds. Well, I must say my knee really is hurting. It's really a bummer. Anyway, this is the book, Elvis and the Colonel. I've been reading this, trying to just prepare for that last episode that I was going to do. I might do that, I don't know, over the next week or so. It may be a members only video. I'll make up my mind about that also. One thing that's really interesting in this book is at the very back of the book is a document. At the very back of the book is a document. Can you see it? And this document is proof that Elvis, sorry, not Elvis, the Colonel was deported from America, and it says in the document, reimbursed at the expense of the American government. So this document proves that the Colonel, who eventually managed Elvis, was deported, obviously against his will, but at the charge of the American government. And obviously when he came all the way back to America and he wanted to go back to America, he was going to need money to get back. And that then makes you wonder, is that where the burglary happened, which became a murder? So anyway, there's quite a lot of interesting detail in this book that I'd like to share with you guys when we do that final analysis of Elvis and the Colonel. So look out for that. Let's have a look at any further questions and comments. Oh, Stephanie says, I watched the Elvis movie. Yeah, it was the anniversary, I think 45th anniversary of Elvis's death a few days ago. Yeah. Carla Bryan says, why were the front seats pushed all the way back? I don't know where you heard that. What's your source for that information? Terry says, do you have any interest in a deep dive on Melanie Gibbs ahead of the Velo Daybell trial? I'll think about it. But Melanie Gibbs is certainly a kind of a star witness in terms of that trial. Aging Hippie says, if Elvis had been a modern rock star, he would have died age 27. I think so. But he probably also would have traveled abroad. It would have been like, you are definitely coming overseas. Liz Graham, thanks very much. I think it's the one and only super chat for this session. Glad to at last catch you live. Thanks for your channel. Thanks a lot. I did feel like there are a lot of subscribers here who on the channel who subscribe for coverage of Caitlyn Armstrong, Alec Baldwin. I know there's a lot of people interested in JonBenet Ramsey, and covering the Kylie Rodney case for 2 weeks, basically bumper to bumper. I just wanted to, do the due diligence for you guys. Yeah. So that's about it. Margaret Zabinski, thanks. I hope I didn't guilt you into that. So good news for the members. Tomorrow I'll be doing episode 29 in the Vincent van Gogh series. It'll be members only, so those of you who are subscribers won't be able to see it, just because some people seem to feel like, oh, if there's content that I'm not interested in, well, then I'll unsubscribe. Well, if you can't see it, then maybe it won't bother you as much. So we're going to be trying that out. Onesie, thanks a lot. We're going to be trying that out, and hopefully that'll be okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Something that I found quite interesting with the Kylie Rodney case is I initially thought that the car wasn't in neutral, because when you look from a distance, it actually looked like the car was dragged up the slope. It looked like it left deep, muddy tracks. But actually, that was just the water coming out and leaving like a dark, muddy trail. When you look at the video, it is obvious that the wheels are turning. But it is interesting how every day your knowledge base expands with the case. You just got to keep paying attention. Sunflower says, I watch all your content. Onesie, I'm glad you are glad. Yeah. I think we stopped the Van Gogh letters at a very crucial point. His father had just died and he was about to create this masterpiece. So it'll be quite interesting to continue with that. Sandy, I think they would. I think they would have to put it in neutral to move the vehicle. I think if you have a vehicle that you want to move, you're going to put it in neutral. I'm starting to get the feeling, because Kylie was a minor, we're not going to get as much information in the fullness of time than you would normally get. I just get that feeling. And I think that's going to be, in a way, bad, because conspiracy theorists are going to milk that. They're going to use that in the absence of information. They're going to fill that vacuum. It's already happening, regretfully. Yvonne says, I hope we didn't guilt you into having to return to them. No, the members that are here are mostly members for Van Gogh letters. So it's actually the opposite. I feel like I owe you guys. I mean, you've signed up for content on it. I might do a little bit less than every week. I might do once a week or something. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Bria says, so scary, some of the things that are being said. I know you guys know what I mean. Yeah. Stephanie says, you made an excellent point with the seatbelt, that it would be off from her trying to escape if conscious. It would be more suspect if she was still seatbelted in the front. Thanks. Yeah. Liz Graham says the content here is truly interesting and gets the brain engaged. That's the reason why I have membership. LOL, great channel. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, I am actually thinking of, I know I've been saying it for a long time, but I'm thinking of doing a book club thing, because there are lots of books that I want to talk about, including true crime books that I've read that I haven't written, but also true crime books that I have written that you want to talk about. And I think it might be better to do within a members only thing, but also where only members can see that, just because it's more comfortable talking in a somewhat private space in terms of that. Mel Stiller says interesting and intelligent. Yeah, Pauline says that's what I'm afraid of, that not all of the information will be released to the public. Stephanie says, I'd love a book club. I want to read more. Yeah, okay. Well, I can't wait to talk to you guys a little bit about what's in this book. But what's nice about book club is you don't necessarily make the mistake of buying a book and then not reading it. Someone says, I've read this incredible book. I read it in one sitting. It's one of the best books I've ever read. And then you get that word of mouth recommendation that's often so useful and so powerful. So that would be pretty good. Lisa says, thank you from the subscriber. Thanks. And so on that note, guys, thanks for joining me on this quick recap. I think I'm going to be doing it more when I feel like I'm behind with cases rather than doing a separate video. I actually have quite a lot to say about, well, let me rather do the episode than say that, because I think someone might jump the gun. Komarebi says, I'm afraid to comment on the Kylie Rodney case anymore because people are so polarized. Yeah, it can be, although this is quite a safe community, I think. Empath says, I have Audible and don't like it, prefer to read myself. So I do post audiobooks on Patreon. The audiobooks on the $5 tier, and about 10 that I've narrated, and 10 on the $10 tier that are longer, that I've also narrated. And what you can do there is, as we go through each chapter, you can comment, and you can either ask the author questions or engage with your fellow readers. I think that's an aspect that Audible doesn't have. That's maybe quite nice. Seashore Girl says, Kylie seems accidental. Suzanne, thanks very much. Appreciate it. I'd not paid attention to any of the Alec Baldwin stuff. Thanks for the recap. Pleasure. Yeah, I mean, from a distance, it looked like there's nothing to see here, but it's definitely been interesting covering it. Definitely. So if you are curious now, I've got a whole playlist with, just go through my channel. There's a playlist of Alec Baldwin videos. Go through them from the beginning. There's even body cam, the statements the armorer made to the police, the statements that Alec Baldwin made, and so on and so on. Definitely is quite interesting. Okay. Mel Stiller says, my sincere thanks to everyone who commented on my description of grief and grieving. I really appreciate your support. I must say, I really am glad that I put that out. It's not what I normally put out, but I feel like we so often in true crime have the same conversations. Is this person lying? Is there a red flag? Crime scene, autopsy, it's all that same stuff. What about after that? What about the stuff that affects us in our lives? And so I thought that was quite an important thing to address. Yeah, so I'm glad that you got a benefit out of it. Have you guys gone to watch that video that I suggested you watch in the description. I found it incredibly inspiring. So, I hope that you guys would too. From a top triathlete, just such a strong person, just about how you build resilience from injury. It's something I could certainly learn from right now. I'm a little bit injured. Thanks a lot, Seashore Girl. So, guys, if you haven't watched the episode on grief, make sure that you do. Shall I quickly put a link to that in case you guys don't know where it is? See if I can find it. And then I'm going to sign off. There it is. And what was quite interesting when I researched this was I did Google it. I had my own thoughts. I did Google it, and I felt I can kind of contribute more than what is on the internet. In other words, sharing my personal thoughts and journey is more instructive and insightful, just in my opinion, than sort of going to Google or reading an article. And I hope you guys felt the same. I do feel like with true crime, it can sometimes feel so callous, and it's one after the other, and there's a rush to deal with information. I do often feel you've got to turn all of that kind of ectrospection, external looking. You've got to sometimes turn it back on yourself, and that's what that was sort of about. Yeah, grief connects all of us. Where's the link on resilience from injury? It's in the description of that video on grief. It's in the description. It's really well worth watching. Sandy says I need to go and watch the beginning. Okay, cool. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for joining me here. It's not going to be a very long one. Take care. Mods, thanks for being here. Stephanie, Bria. I don't know if I've missed anyone. We haven't seen Jean Karras for a while. I wonder where she is. I hope she's okay. But also members, and then also subscribers, new subscribers. Thanks also for all of those super chats. Appreciate it. Members, see you guys tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.